As usual in this house, everyone wakes up very early. The woman has been looking for Courtney all morning to find her pendant. She found her and immediately noticed the strange green dress. She didn't like it so much that the woman couldn't help but ask what was wrong with her clothes and how she could leave the room in it. The girl does not quite understand what she did not like because she thinks that everything looks good. She chose her outfit for a very long time. In addition, did not ask for her opinion and made it clear that her appearance is nobody's business. She started to go somewhere after a second, whispering that she was the only one who cared about her reputation, and if someone didn't know how to dress, there was nothing to argue about. Besides, you could ask, and she would be helped by those who had a sense of taste. The woman is very puzzled. She doesn't want Courtney to wear it in public because there's no telling what they'll think of her. She opens her closet and starts looking at what to change that awful dress into because it's no good. The thing is that last night the woman warned that today there will be a tea party, which is organized by the Duchess, she repeated several times. What the lady is picky and obsessed with fashion, so it is necessary to urgently think of something, especially in the presence of the Duchess. The lady looks at it and does not understand where this person has so much energy, and in general, where she has the desire and strength to follow the clothes of other people. The girl did not succeed in not being heard. The woman very quickly came up with an answer. She believes that because of the behavior of some, the reputation of the family should not suffer. Accordingly, she is not going to ignore it. Courtney wondered if the Duchess could even damage the reputation of their family, and also how much she cared what the people around her were going to be in, because that was everyone's choice. In fact, the girl is well aware that she has a very complex character that cannot be fought, Dabon County, a father who never had any stability regarding the budget and was always trying to do something. But more often than not, nothing ended in success. A mother who, thanks to her rich relatives, even though they still didn't help the Debon family, can behave arrogantly and vainly. The only brother who's obsessed with games where he loses everything, he doesn't even have time to make money. Debon County is up to its neck in debt and on the verge of bankruptcy, a situation that has been building slowly for years. But only Courtney, the second child in the family, suspects that things are not going to get better, only worse and more hopeless. In the meantime, her mother had already chosen a few suitable looks for her and ordered her to choose something, but not to appear in the presence of the Duchess in what she was wearing now. Otherwise, she would perceive it as a betrayal and an attempt to harm the family. The woman warned that if she saw her in that green dress again, the girl would not go anywhere. And even if she tried to run away, she would regret it very much and would be thrown out of the house for tomorrow. During these 10 minutes, the lady did not have time to realize the situation and could not answer anything. She is very much against this idea and believes that no one has the right to decide for her what to wear. She personally does not care what other people are wearing. She just judges everyone by herself. Courtney was very unhappy. Her mom didn't choose the best options. All these dresses are summer dresses, and it's spring outside. They can be chilly, and in general, they don't fit the tea party format. Even what she's wearing now, she thinks, fits much better. In all this situation, Courtney Debon did not even hope for a bright future. She had already resigned herself to the fact that nothing good awaits her and does not even dream of any gifts of fate. Like today, she usually has no choice even in what to wear. She does only what others say and has already forgotten what it is like to refuse and think about herself. In recent years, no one has heard any opinion from her. People are used to the fact that the girl does not know how to refuse, and she is easy to control. One wonders if there was a time and if she could ever have dreamed of having hope for anything at all. Suddenly, Courtney allowed such a thought in her head and felt that something had to be done about it. And in the meantime, they were all assembled and going to visit. The woman had ordered a carriage and made sure that no one was late. She was hurrying everyone along, for the future of the family might depend on the outcome of the meeting. Although in fact, only she is worried about it, the daughter does not care what the Duchess thinks. She goes there only out of politeness, just to avoid conflicts with her mother and spoil her mood. On the way, They started looking through the window at the beautiful view of children walking near the fountain, and casually wondered how long it had been since someone in their family had been as happy as these children were. It had been more than a few years since there had been a smile on their faces. They haven't been happy for a long time because there are problems everywhere. The family is starting to fall apart, and it seems that it's too late to fight it. They should have thought about it earlier. Meanwhile, the girl sits in her seat and does not even look at her mother, although the woman tries to talk to her. But it is clear that this is an exceptional case. Usually, they do not notice each other and live as if they were strangers. Things are so bad that they literally see nothing to cheer them up in the world. They are not cheered by the good weather, nor by the fact that they have been invited to tea by the Duchess herself. Nothing. And the worst of it is that now they have to pretend to be a happy family, which in fact they are not. They are not going to have a good time, but to take the slightest chance that the Duchess might be interested in their problems and want to help them. High society in the capital, cool as if after a battle, where swords and spears fly on either side, any invitation means only passing through the first gate. Meanwhile, they have already arrived at their destination, and the first thing that cannot be ignored is the beautiful roses and their fragrance that spread throughout the palace. It looks incredibly delicate and beautiful. Where else, if not in this palace, you can look at such a huge collection of roses? It is immediately clear what is the favorite type of flowers in the mistress of this house. Here it is customary to seat guests according to hierarchy. Different people cannot be together. They will always be on different sides of the table, and everyone knows it. One of the topics most often discussed by guests here is a beautiful garden. Because as everyone knows, girls are very fond of everything that is connected with flowers and do not miss the opportunity to admire them even during a tea party. Meanwhile, the Duchess of Rayton has already met the first guests and tells them that her husband brought these beautiful roses, having bought them from a good friend of hers. Besides, they are the best variety that can be found. The man could not pass by, as he knows his wife's great love for this kind of flowers. The woman loves to talk about it and to hear compliments about her splendid husband. This is all very well and fine, of course, but there is one point that is a bit unpleasant. The Deben family have been sat on the sidelines, and that is that no one wants to socialize with them. Their status is not high enough to allow them to sit next to the Duchess. You can notice that the closer the guest sits to the hostess, the happier and more smiling. And those who were judged further away, especially at the very end, they have no mood, and people do not even hide it, such as Courtney's mom. Moreover, she started to say that it's all because of her daughter and that it's all her fault. That's where today ended. The uncomfortable questions are just beginning. The woman asked if the girl was happy with the way their family was treated. That's exactly what they talked about at home. Now we have to think about how to fix things. The woman believes that if her daughter had listened to her more, they would not have been greeted with such coldness, and at least would not have been seated at the end of the table. Courtney couldn't stand it and laughed back because she knows it's not her fault. And then asked if she does not like the attitude of the Duchess, why could not refuse when the invitation was sent? They even then knew where they would be seated, and the girl does not understand what is the point of being here because no one even notices them. They only continue to feel more and more unneeded, and finally, the woman came up with an answer. She said that if she dared to refuse, she would not be invited anywhere else, especially not to the estate of the esteemed Duchess. To be here, their family is honored. She could not miss this opportunity and would come no matter what. In the meantime, it's so bad that they don't even have waiters coming to them. For the other guests, they are very polite and attentive. They offer different drinks and make sure no one has empty plates. They put the food on and ask if everything is okay. But not in the case of the Deben family. They are like invisible guests. Actually, the girl is very aware of her mom's anger. Last month, she accidentally canceled her reservation for a purple dress. At their table, people sit for different reasons. Some can even be judged by the color of their dress. In the world of aristocrats, this is very important. Every lady is wearing dresses that went out of fashion at best last year. Who does not have a lot of money and someone has connections, have to take what is the lowest price. so the color of the dress is appropriate. At one point, Courtney starts to get very cold and remembers resenting her summer dress. She knew it was going to be cold and starts to get angry with herself for not being able to defend her green dress. Like suddenly, the girl's mom saw a purple dress on some girl and it totally ruined her mood. That purple color literally worked the same way red does on a bull. And the worst part is that the girls who are just like that sitting near the Duchess are almost all in purple dresses. Although in fact, it doesn't make any sense. Even if someone from the Desbonne family did come in a purple dress, they wouldn't be put in another seat anyway. Their situation is too desperate and nothing will help, especially not the color of the dress. It was absolutely pointless to hope for that. They've long since lost everything. They have no reputation, and so much so that no one even said hello to them. Meanwhile, all these girls in purple dresses are gathered at a separate table to watch Miss Chelder do something they keep asking her to do again, because it looks so impressive. The thing is that the girl can write without any accessories. For example, now, she took a pen, which does not have a drop of ink in it. Any other person could not write a single character with this pen, and she can write whole sentences endlessly, and she can do it all night long. Magic has entered the lives of some aristocrats in various ways: a cane that unfolds itself, or a kettle that boils without a fire. Usually aristocrats do not boil water themselves, instead it is done by assistants. In any case, it is just a luxury, without which it is quite possible to live an ordinary life. Some people have been trying to buy this feather for years, but no one even realizes, except for the aristocrats of course, that it's not about that at all. And that's not all. As soon as the girl turned towards her mom to discuss the topic and laugh at how people could think they could also write something without ink, she wasn't there. The woman ran to those girls and said that she really wanted to buy this feather. It looked ridiculous, because at least she had no money and no one would sell her anything. Courtney was very ashamed of her mother, because it looked very ridiculous. If only the girl could turn back the clock, she would be able to talk her out of it and explain that she shouldn't do it. But it's too late now. All that's left is to look at it and feel a terrible sense of shame. At one point, Courtney couldn't take it anymore. She started screaming very loudly and ordered her mom to come back so she wouldn't embarrass herself and draw attention to herself. The woman began to tell me how beautiful it was, and that she needed it so badly that she wanted nothing more than this wonderful purchase. It was impossible to believe, but she smiled so big and sincere for the first time in many years. Even her daughter had not expected it. It was as if she had seen her in such a mood for the first time. In such a case, the girl had nothing left but to go to that lady in person and ask her to refuse her mother and not to sell the feather. She explained why the lady should help her and began to hope that the lady would not refuse. Courtney was so reluctant to make this purchase that she told about her family's money problems. They don't even have money for food. And then, suddenly, her mom wanted to do something rash and spend every penny she had. They can't afford to buy such a thing. And it's strange that Courtney is more worried about the family budget than her mom. Usually the woman doesn't act like this. But today there's something strange with her. She doesn't look like herself at all. Then they start arguing amongst themselves and drawing even more attention to themselves. All in all, it's just awful. The tea party went much worse than they expected. You can imagine how embarrassed they'll be when they have to say goodbye. Everyone is already laughing at them, and they don't even hide it. Usually aristocrats don't react and behave like this, but today is a special situation. Besides, they are seeing these two for the first time. Meanwhile, the woman can't understand why she reacted so badly, because she doesn't see anything wrong in it. Moreover, she even started to be afraid of her screaming, although it never happened before. Everything was the opposite. Courtney literally can't take it anymore. She can't contain herself and says everything she thinks. The girl doesn't care if people are looking at her or not. She really wants to vent her anger on her mom. She's already tired of saying that if she buys this thing, things will only get worse. People will laugh even more, since it's no secret that they have money problems, to put it mildly. Besides, when they were at home and were getting ready, the woman herself said how important it was for her to preserve or at least improve the reputation of the family. So, the girl intends to take everything into her own hands. She decided that they will not buy anything, started to take this thing away and seems to want to break it down. People do not understand what is happening, and some even became interested in watching it. The aristocrats felt as if at a performance in the theater and did not regret that they came to this event. Today, here is especially fun. Everyone has forgotten about their drinks. Courtney is the center of attention, and it seems like it's not over. It's just beginning and no one is planning to leave, not even those who were going to leave early. Meanwhile, the woman left very suddenly, as if she had realized the situation, or perhaps she was just offended that her daughter had yelled at her in front of everyone and still hadn't even thought to apologize. Either way, however the situation plays out, she's sure it's not her fault, and it's better to suffer the embarrassment for a few minutes than to be chased and owed a debt later on. In the end, this is what happened. All these people started to discuss the behavior of the girl who for no reason forbids her mother to shop. Although these people do not even know what they are talking about, they have no right to judge anyone because they have never been in their shoes. Courtney has already gotten used to it, so she decided to be a little patient. Because anyway, it's not the worst thing that could happen. The main thing is that everyone is alive and well. At least the girl is pleased with herself that she did not let the family's debts increase because of some pen, which has no sense and no value. It would be much more sensible to buy some food. She had already forgotten the last time she had eaten breakfast, much less something tasty. It was too bad she was used to it because now she had no options to get on the right track. In the tactical society, the most criticized was the young daughter of the family, who could not perform decently in society. For this, she was often humiliated and compared with others, which is absolutely wrong to do, especially to a child who does not understand why he is hated by the most dear people, parents. In the meantime, they had already reached home, and during the whole time, no one had said a single word. They were silent the whole way and did not even look at each other. There was complete silence, and in general, not a very pleasant atmosphere. They already go into the yard and act like strangers who don't know each other. The woman purposely makes a disgruntled look so that the daughter apologizes, but she will never do that. She doesn't read that it's her fault and also waits for some kind of explanation from the mother's side. It seems that the woman does not realize what she has done yet, because if she just sat silently until the end of the event, everything would have been much better. Nobody would have discussed them and laughed at her strange behavior. But she was so much worried about her reputation and was afraid to do something wrong. Since Courtney is a very kind person, she had a thought to talk to her mother. But such a thought immediately disappeared. The girl thinks that she has had enough. She already feels guilty all the time and apologized when she shouldn't. She has no doubt that the next day, the woman will realize everything and explain what it was. The girl did everything right. So, with a clear conscience, she can rest and do her business, unlike some people whose mind is as if obscured by a fog. A man who was most afraid of appearing somehow wrong in high society, as if he had purposely done the opposite, and strangely enough, sees nothing wrong with it, and even dares to resent the daughter who tried to make things right. In the meantime, they went into the house and heard someone crying. Then they saw Elizabeth and were very surprised, for they had never seen her in such a state. She is usually a very cheerful person, who never cries or is sad about anything. The girl literally cannot contain her emotions. Usually she is very calm, but here she is not herself. Her face is red. You can see that she cries for a long time, and something very serious has happened. She is the wife of Frederick, Courtney's brother. They have always had a good relationship. The girls communicate normally and sometimes even confide their secrets, as well as being able to help and comfort each other when needed. And in the meantime, she told me that her assistant, Jack, had quit and resigned without saying anything. She doesn't understand what happened. They didn't have a strong conflict, but he packed all his things and left the house, saying that he will never come back here again, and she may not wait for him. She is completely confused and doesn't realize what happened. He was one of the best helpers to whom she trusted absolutely everything. The girl treated him as a friend, that's why. So hard to bear this moment. She never thought that such a thing was possible. Elizabeth asks her mother who will help her with clothes, who will do the laundry and cleaning, because there is no one better at it than him. Courtney watches all this and thinks that she would like to cry and let all her emotions out. But there is one difference. Elizabeth is always pitied, and no one even pays attention to her. The woman begins to comfort her daughter. They look like family, and she is like an extra. Although it has always been like that, and the girl has long been used to it, sometimes she just thinks about it. And when it becomes unbelievable, she immediately stops thinking about it. There was so much injustice in her life that if she had been sad about everything, she would not have been able to stand it. But in order not to be silent, Courtney joined the conversation and made it clear that this was not the time to cry, and asked if they realized the situation they were in. Since they didn't have an assistant now, they would have to do all the work. No one else would do it. She says that they will do the cleaning and laundry themselves because they don't even pay the cook who cooks their food every day, so they can't find a new helper to replace Jack. Those who are used to working in them for free, who have accepted that even if it happens, they do not receive the full amount. Such people can no longer be found. If new ones are hired, they will have to pay everything as it should be, every month, not a penny less, because no one will agree to work under such conditions under which the previous assistants worked. In fact, she was tired of explaining basic things to them, even though they were all adults and should understand it better than her, at least their mother. She was a grown woman, but she was acting like a child. Courtney was tired of trying to keep this house and land. It was time for them to face the truth and admit what was happening to them. The girl screamed and asked them to stop behaving like this and think about the future. As soon as the woman started to get indignant and asked why she was shouting at the whole house, Marta, the cook, suddenly came up to them. She apologized for interrupting the conversation and apparently wanted to ask something. Turns out she just came up to say you don't have to worry about her. She's not going to leave like Jack and is willing to work even under those conditions. The woman smiled and said that it was very good that the cooks were happy with everything, but the girl understood perfectly well that there was nothing to be happy about. It was very wrong of them to treat the staff like that and take advantage of their goodness. Because the estate is empty, the voices echo throughout the house. Within these walls, the only person who comforts her is her faithful assistant, no one else. It would seem that such a person should be her mother, but in their case, this is impossible. She doesn't have the energy to explain how much trouble they're in, and if they don't do something about it now, it's only going to get worse. And when everyone realizes that it should have been dealt with when she first brought it up, it will be too late. She reiterated that it was impossible to find a single worker in the capital who would agree to work in that house, with only food and some pennies as remuneration, and that without any guarantees. The thing is, if the family fell into poverty suddenly and the relatives couldn't accept it in any way, then Courtney would be able to understand their feelings and even want to help them. Except as far as she can remember, the Desbonne family had been struggling since she was a little girl and lived about the same way they do now, without trying to fix anything. The girl decided that she wasn't going to do anything and try as long as it was needed, not only for her, but for anyone else. She just went to her room and wouldn't stay with them. Suddenly, her nephew called her. He ran up very discreetly as if something had happened. The girl could not ignore him and asked what happened. She realizes that no one else but her will not help him. And since he is a child, Courtney remembers herself in his place and, of course, tries to help with everything. But it turns out that he just noticed that he was not in the mood and asked why she was sad. Apparently, this boy is the only one who cares about her. He is genuinely interested in her well-being, and if he could, he would have helped her anyway. She is pleased even that he is just interested in it. Edie is a very kind boy. He never passes by those who have something wrong. The girl is very happy for him because he is the only one who cares about the others. And if he was not so young, he would have thought of something long ago. He inherited his brother's green eyes and Elizabeth's golden hair, but he didn't have the temperament for it. That nephew, a wonderful child, Edward Dobbin, Courtney has always protected him and will protect him for the rest of his life. She is sorry he has such relatives who don't care about themselves, let alone anything else. At this time, he should still be asleep. But apparently the boy heard that everyone had gone home, and he was curious to know where they had all been. She replied that she had to go somewhere on business, and the next time she had to leave, she would be sure to warn him and wouldn't leave without saying anything. At some point, the girl thought, how could she forget and cannot for him anything from the tea party? There were a lot of desserts, which he is incredibly fond of, and certainly would not refuse, because at home there is nothing like that, and has not been for a long time. There were a lot of sweets that Edward had never tasted, never even seen. He would have liked something, and it was a pity that no one remembered it. In fact, he is the main reason why the girl is still in this house and hasn't run away. She wants to take care of him just a little bit, so that he grows up and doesn't feel superfluous or lonely, as it was in her case. Courtney worked as a maid or a waitress in some diner, a noblewoman's status, just a wrapper without any content, which many at the time already guessed. It was at this moment, as she was hugging her nephew, that it occurred to her that at night she would have to think about where to get money. This boy should grow up in normal conditions and not need anything, especially as far as food or normal clothes were concerned. She is ready to do anything for the sake of this beautiful child. She wants him to be happy and remember only good things about her. The girl knows what it is like not to have any pleasant memories from childhood or afraid to return to that time. So she has a new goal, to try to give her a life that's a little different from the one she's been living. Meanwhile, the evening came. The whole family gathered around the table for dinner, but as usual, it couldn't go quietly. Everyone suddenly started blaming Courtney, especially Mom. She didn't like the soup, but was it really Courtney who made it today, not Martha? Judging by her mom's words and reaction to this dish, it really was just that she resents it a lot and can't eat a single spoonful. Supposedly looking, it's not appetizing at all. And also, she didn't like the bread too hard. But the girl was not confused and said that they should be happy at least with it. And if someone doesn't like something, she doesn't mind. Someone else can cook instead of her. For example, the one who is the most indignant. It turns out that everything was a little bit wrong. This dinner was cooked by Martha, but there is one thing that affected the taste of the dish. Courtney decided to deal with the budget of the family and this time insisted on saving money. Accordingly, it affected the taste of the usual food, and the cook is not to blame here. As usual, my mother didn't know about it. I didn't have time to supervise it. She didn't understand when the Debon family's budget had been taken over by Courtney. The woman went to her husband and asked him to tell her something because she thought it was a terrible idea to save money on food. Of course, he could not keep silent. He turned to his daughter and asked her to listen to her mother. The girl replied that if they spend everything, it is not known when they will be able to pay back the money, and also they should be grateful that in this family at least someone is trying to do something. In the end, the father didn't succeed. He was a little upset and afraid of what his wife was going to say, and she was already angry, and asked if that was all he could do. She literally has no more energy to put up with it. The woman is very angry because she doesn't intend to give up delicious food just because they have money problems to solve. Courtney was not confused and replied that now, if someone doesn't realize it, even eating and sleeping is a luxury for them. And if someone cared about their family, or at the very least, someone was an adult, none of this would have happened. In that case, no one could answer her, and it was quite expected. There was complete silence in the room, and the girl was even glad of it, because now she could eat without listening to anyone else. Suddenly, as soon as everyone had run out of arguments, Elizabeth joined the conversation. She thinks that this is not the way to live. She doesn't understand the point of saving money if their lives suffer. She thinks there must be another method. The girl once again realized that none of these people even approximately do not understand how to solve this problem. Because if they do not want to save money, it is necessary at least to earn more money to go to work. But this is also, no one wants, it turns out, a vicious circle. She again did not please anyone. All only spoiled her mood. Although they could, and thank for the effort, no one has not thought of even to this for so many years. All she has to do is take care of her nephew, who understands a lot more than all these adults put together. She started to add a portion of soup for him, but in response, the boy didn't start saying he didn't want any. He asked if there would be a portion left for her. He asked that she eat something too and pay no attention to anyone else. This conflict, it's no reason to stay hungry, and it sounded very nice to her. She smiled at him and said that she would eat. The main thing was that he wouldn't go hungry, and she would find something to eat during the day. At that moment, she wondered how long they would last in such conditions. Most of all, she was afraid to imagine that the debts would be so high that someone would one day come and take the house away from them. Besides, because of the lack of support, every day she had less and less strength and self-confidence, because as it turned out, no one was interested in solving the problems except her. This family has a lot of debts. They have been accumulating since Courtney was a child. Once the father gave away hundreds and thousands of money to other people, but he could never pay it back, even though they have receipts. Most of these businesses were set up for fraud, so they will never get anything back unless some miracle happens. No one knew that even if they wanted to, where to find all these people who took their money. Every year there is less and less stock left, but there is still a way to solve the debt problem. The thing is that the family owns the last territory, which is located in the south. The girl has long wanted to propose this, but since the situation is already too critical, there is no time to keep silent. She wants to propose to give it up. In her opinion, this is the only relatively easy way to solve everything. Everything will depend only on the parents because she has no right to say anything. The girl will only offer and they will decide. Besides, thanks to the fact that they own this land, you can stretch time with debts and think everything over well if someone has the desire to do so. So, she's been thinking about it for days, and I don't even know how to tell her parents. Courtney is worried that they still don't care enough to even listen to her. This is her last option. If it doesn't work out, they'll be in this position forever and will never be able to get out of this pit of problems. If they sell the land, they will remain aristocrats, but the title of the earldom will be bye-bye. She does not care what her brother will do after that. But the person she does not care about, her nephew, she should think about him, whether she can control his fate if suddenly he will have some problems after that. And on the other hand, they can sell the estate in the capital and go to live in the countryside. It's also a good option. And even if they cannot repay the debt in full, they can pay at least half, and that's not bad. When Edward comes of age, he can inherit a large sum of money, but it seems, though it sounds very tempting, she can't do it. The plan is too perfect, but at the same time it seems impossible. It sounds too fantastic, especially since she is the only one interested in it. Parents as if they are ready to live in such conditions for the rest of their lives and are not going to do anything about it. In any case, there is no answer, there is no guarantee, you just have to act. If she sits in one place, they will not succeed, and as long as she has the motivation and inspiration to do it, why not try and get at least some chance to win? Even though it was night and everyone should have been resting long ago, Courtney heard some sounds from the first floor. She felt that there were some people downstairs, and the voices seemed unfamiliar to her. She was very surprised, and of course she wanted to check it out in case there was anything. The girl does not understand what is going on, because usually no one walks around the house late at night. If someone would need to go to the restroom, each of the residents of this house has his own room near the room. Respectively, there is no reason to go down to the first floor. It turns out that it was her brother who was shouting. Some people came to his house and started demanding to return the debt. They were tired of waiting for several months. Although they had agreed that they would get their money back within a few days, the guy keeps saying that he will pay everything back soon. But nothing changes. No wonder these people had no choice and came to his house. When they began to look around, were very much distressed, for they saw that there was nothing here that could be taken away and sold for a good sum. Frederick had never yet been glad of this, that there were no valuable things left in the family. After they began to teach him and tell him that when borrowing something, it is desirable to return it and not to cheat people who once believed him. At that moment, a girl came out. She did not hide, and directly asked what was going on here and who prevented her from resting in peace. They looked at her with a very puzzled look and wondered if it was worth explaining anything at all, because she probably had a pretty good idea why people might come to someone's house late at night and demand something, especially if it involved their family. So that they would not have to shout from the second floor to the ground floor, Courtney came up to them, introduced herself as Frederick's younger sister, and once again asked what was going on here, although at the same time she understood everything perfectly well. They immediately started laughing, as if they had heard something funny, as if they didn't want to explain anything, and were about to attack her as well. Meanwhile, while she waited for a reply, she looked at her brother and saw that he was in a good way. He had gotten himself into this mess, and since these people were treating the first son who should inherit the title like this, she could hardly expect them to respect her. As expected, they did not talk to her and asked her if she came to them. They were leaving, wanted to solve this issue instead of her brother, to which the girl replied that it was very late and suggested to come to them in the afternoon, when everyone would be ready to talk and could solve something. But judging by their reactions, they're clearly not going anywhere, and one of them says he thinks the noise was enough to wake everyone else up. Plus, they don't really want to come back here again. After this, the girl could not help herself. She almost cried and asked why they were doing this, because they knew what a difficult situation they were in, and reminded them that they were not going anywhere and were not going to run away. They knew the address and could come at any time, like today. In which case, they demanded they pay what they owed right now and promised they wouldn't go anywhere until they got what they owed. One of them started throwing out all these debt papers. Kortan looked at them and almost threw up. She couldn't look at them anymore. She'd seen them 100 times over the years. She doesn't know when there will be times when she won't see them anymore. There was a time when she dreamed about these papers. Courtney even puts them away from visible places on purpose so as not to get upset. She starts picking up these papers from the floor. And at that moment, her hands are visibly shaking. She doesn't even want to touch them, let alone hold them for a long time. Anyway, she had to do it because she wanted to know how much money they were talking about. Courtney started reading and saw an amount that she initially thought might be some kind of mistake. She didn't think they had come to demand that much money. If you roughly calculate it, it would be almost half the value of this house. At the end of each sheet, there is a stamp of Marquis Malron. He is a famous aristocrat who is behind all the establishments where her brother left money. And when he was short of his own, he borrowed it from this man. The girl does not understand how the Marquis could give money to her brother. Meanwhile, one of these strangers says, since the man agreed to it, you should thank him and kiss his hands and not ask all these questions and try to deceive him. He says he's asking one last time, which is how they're going to pay off the debt, but the girl has no idea where she's going to find so much money in the middle of the night and what she's going to say to that. After consulting among themselves for a while, they started smiling and asked to vacate the estate as soon as possible, so that no one would dare to take away their house. The boy decided to intervene in the situation and asked for a little more time. He promised that tomorrow he would meet with the Marquis and talk on the subject. These two are asking why he even thought that the Marquis would be interested in talking to him and that he would even want to see him. He hardly has time to talk to people like him. And to solve the problem, he just sent his assistants. That's what they are. In that case, the girl began to think of ways to kick them out of the house. She very quickly came up with another idea and said that they would decide what to sell and would soon pay back the debt. But they were not going to give up the house, much less leave him in the middle of the night. Left with nothing, she was sure things could be worked out differently and promised that she would make the most of it as soon as possible. And also, she's so engrossed in this conversation that she decides to trick and ask for proof that they came from the Marquis Malron, because so far she has no reason to believe what they say, because they could just be passers-by who know about the family's problems. These two are clearly confused. They don't even know how to react to this and didn't expect it to go this far and have to prove where they came from or who sent them. Courtney demanded at least the slightest bit of information, like voicing exactly who they were working for the Marquis. Otherwise, she wasn't going to believe a word they said anymore. In response, one of them pushed the girl, although she had expected it. I wondered what would happen next, because so far everything was too confusing and unclear. At some point, the nephew began to cough violently, and thus it became clear that everyone else had been eavesdropping on this conversation for a long time. Courtney knew they were awake, but still, she tried to work it out for herself. As suddenly, she ordered the two to lift her up and warned them that if they didn't, she would tell their master how they were behaving towards her, though she owed her nothing personally. In general, it turns out that they raise their hand on the aristocrat. The girl warned that if they leave right now, so be it. She will not tell anyone about it, as she thinks that they hardly want to worsen the situation. Meanwhile, her brother felt that she completely took control of the situation and just trusted her. He does not even say anything and as if hiding behind her. Afterward, she asked that maybe if they wanted to go down a different path, then of course she would love to hear their idea. In the end, they apologized very quickly and left the house. Her brother took it as some kind of miracle. He realizes that he would never have dealt with them himself. He doesn't even have words to describe how grateful he is to her. As soon as there were no strangers left in the house, everybody relaxed, especially Courtney. She had done a really good job because it could have been very different. Surprisingly, Frederick's wife immediately ran up to them, but instead of thanking Courtney, she started hugging him. Although if it wasn't for this man, they would have had a lot less financial problems. And the man to be hugged now, she was clearly confused. The girl started to ask if he was all right, for she had heard how hard they were beating him up. And only the nephew went up to his aunt to thank her for all that effort. They could have been without a home today, but she had solved everything. Not completely, but solved it all. He began to worry about her so much that he almost cried and started asking if she had any wounds on her. The girl realized that he was really scared and said that she was fine. She just hugged him and promised that it wouldn't happen again. Unless, of course, his uncle would teach him a lesson and not do something like that again so that the whole family would suffer later. And meanwhile, her parents came down to the first floor. Her father was the first to ask her a question. He asked if she was okay, and no one had hit her. He couldn't see it well from the second floor. But still, it was surprising that he was even interested in this at all. The girl is still very angry with them, because when she offered to solve the problem before, no one wanted anything. And when strangers come to them, she has to deal with everything. Everyone else just stands around and does nothing. However, as usual, instead of at least hugging their daughter and thanking her for it, they made sure that the strangers had left and said that they could go to sleep, as if everything was already fine, and there was no point in staying here. The girl was not surprised, but still a bit unpleasant. They again did not appreciate her efforts and did not even think about what could have happened if it had not been for her. Only her nephew is left with her. The boy understands that she needs support now, and despite his age, he behaves much better than the others. As suddenly as the brother decided to go somewhere and rest with his wife, the girl did not let him do so. She stopped him and asked him who gave him permission to leave. The conversation with him is not over yet, and as soon as he asked to speak with words and not fists, she explained that usually words are used to talk to a person, and he does not deserve it. She warned him not to even hope for a good night's sleep. Someone has to answer for what he has done. One old man was sorry to pay for his grown daughter's dowry, so just where Frederick had lost all his money, that man decided to give his daughter away to some man, just whoever. And of course, the loser was Frederick. A man who loses 9 times out of 10 couldn't have gained anything good. That's why Elizabeth went into the Laban family. That man married her to that guy because he knew she'd never be happy with him like he wanted. So the girl didn't get a penny of dowry. He married for interest only, and now he's decided to deprive the whole family of their home for the same reason. No wonder why Courtney hates him. In the meantime, the next day has come. The Marquis has now left and he is not at home. The girl has come to see him since morning, but something tells her that she is being deceived, and in fact, the Marquis is somewhere in his room and probably does not even realize that someone has come to visit him on business. It seems as if one of the assistants is trying to save him from unnecessary problems. He says that there is no way to meet him. Allegedly, he is away for a few days. In that case, the girl says that she is ready to wait for him here as long as necessary. The assistant thinks it's better to make an appointment and come back another time. Supposedly, that's not how things get done, and he doesn't really like the idea of it. In the end, he closed the door and did not allow people to enter the manor. The girl tried very hard to get inside, but she failed. It seems that there is something wrong here. She does not understand what could be the reason why she is not allowed to meet their master. After she was kicked out, One of the assistants decided to teach the other and reminded him to check every detail before letting anyone on the estate. When she was behind a huge fence, she had an idea not to give up, but it was too little. She needs a new plan because she does not want to go home. The girl wants to spend this day as productive as possible, and nothing should not prevent her from doing so. Very interesting what she came up with. And whatever it is, she is forced to stay by just one fact. That assistant and didn't say the owner wasn't home and was even willing to let her come in until he knew her name. Everything is already not very good, and uncomfortable shoes are chafing. It is impossible to be in them, and even more so to walk comfortably. Everything from the very morning goes completely wrong, even in such small things. It was so painful that the girl could not walk a single meter further. She was forced to stop. She had tears, but she could not do anything about it. No one would bring a second pair of shoes. She just had to stop more often and bear it. The reason why she came to the marquee today would not upset anyone, because there was no collateral on the promissory note. She just wanted to ask him to postpone it during the closing of debts. Doesn't anyone understand that she is not hiding and is not going to run away to avoid paying debts? And in general, it's not her problem. She is trying to help her brother, who will never deal with it himself. She does not understand why it is always so unfair. She wants what is best. But it turns out worse. She is finally tired of tolerating such an attitude towards herself. Because if such efforts were appreciated by someone, everything would be much easier. But as it is, she is literally alone and tries for herself in the last place. She had an idea to change tactics, for if she could turn back time, she could do things completely differently. She should have gotten back at her brother, because at least he didn't even thank her and pretended it was her problem and let her deal with it herself. Although Courtney doesn't have any debts and shouldn't even care about it. Now she can only cry and regret about the way she lived her life, because everything could have been done completely differently. For example, to find a job and move out of this house if they cannot even thank her. But what is the point of helping someone and trying to do it? Earlier, the girl tried to attract attention to herself in this way. But this is clearly not the best method to establish relations with these people. Meanwhile, she is trying to get home with very slow and heavy steps. She doesn't even have money to order a carriage. She has to walk in incredible pain. Courtney is almost there. She just has to be patient a little longer. And the worst part is that she can't even throw away those shoes because she has nothing else to wear. She has long dreamed of doing it, but no one will buy her another. She has to suffer and experience these incredible, painful sensations. Moreover, it is not her size at all. They were already small and uncomfortable, and now they are rubbing. Words can't even describe the pain she's feeling right now, but at the same time, he has no choice. It's not a good idea to stay outside, and it's getting dark soon. She spent the whole day on this road, but she hasn't done anything about it. Finally, the girl is home. It feels like an eternity, maybe even longer. She can barely find the strength to open the wicket. She doesn't even have the strength to open her eyes and look straight in front of her. Suddenly, she hears someone screaming very loudly and running towards her. At first, she didn't understand what it meant, but then she looked up and saw her father, who seemed to be frightened by something. She already thought that something had happened again, or that they were being visited by strangers. The man couldn't say anything. He was running very fast and needed at least a few minutes to recover his breath and explain everything. He even started to ask her to calm down, and the girl replied that the person who needed to calm down now was obviously not her, but someone else. As she had no time to listen to him and wanted to get those awful shoes off as soon as possible, she started to run towards the house, and the man ran after her and barely said something about his majesty. She didn't realize anything. She walks into the house, doesn't even look around, and starts resenting how awful the day was and how she wasted her time. Even though she could have just done nothing and rested, nothing would have changed. As suddenly, very surprisingly, her mom, who usually doesn't notice her daughter, runs up to her and starts hugging her like something happened. She doesn't look like herself. And so far, Courtney really doesn't understand anything. It turns out that everyone wants to give her some information, but it's very strange that everyone seems to be acting strangely. They run up to her like they've been waiting for her all this time. This is something the girl hasn't seen in her whole life. At first, she tried to understand what was going on here and why they were stopping her and preventing her from taking off her shoes. And that's when it gets interesting. Her father caught up with her and somehow managed to explain that His Majesty sent a man to them. But that's not all. They want to make her the crown princess. That's what he wanted to tell her originally. If everything goes well, she will become the wife of the crown prince, and thus will be able to help her family incredibly. They won't have any more debts, and at least it's the only way to get rid of the problems easily. Everything depends only on her. The father and mother rejoice so much, as if they already know that their daughter agrees to it, although she has not yet said her opinion and decision, which is already very interesting to hear. In fact, the girl took their words as something they made up for themselves and are trying to believe it. She's sure it has nothing to do with reality and doesn't see how it's even possible. Anyway, since they started this conversation themselves, she demands an explanation of how they think this is even possible. Because who wants a bride with a kind that's full of problems? The man explains that he didn't make anything up, and she should see for herself. There was some messenger coming from the palace, and if she had seen him, she wouldn't be so hesitant. They didn't expect his visit themselves and didn't think anyone would need it. But even on that, she said it was some kind of mistake, and these people don't realize what kind of problems they might face after she agreed to do it. If she did, of course. Moreover, she's sure that it appears that the messenger was sent to the Rabon family, but by some chance, he mistook them for the Daebon and came here. She even gives her guarantee that this is how it really happened and started laughing. How could they even believe that someone would suggest such an idea to them? In fact, the woman hadn't even thought of it before. She agrees with her daughter and doesn't understand how they could have been so naive. Also, the Rabon family just happens to have a daughter who is of a special age for marriage. The father still resists and thinks he got it right. He even starts to get angry and resentful. After that, he ordered his daughter to get ready for tomorrow's event. There will be some kind of audience, but she still doesn't understand why she has to go if someone's assistant was obviously wrong, and she doesn't want to be in another situation to further ruin the family's reputation. Plus, she doesn't even have the right clothes, to which her father replies that she can borrow any dress from her mother's closet. Courtney just ignored these words and went to her room. She doesn't even want to hear anything else. The more she starts listening to these people, the more she wants to laugh. But just because she doesn't have these powers, she behaves more or less calmly and doesn't show her emotions. Lastly, before she went to her room, she asked her parents to stop worrying because it wouldn't lead to anything good. Now she is not interested in anything but her foot, which does not stop hurting. It is very painful for her to walk without shoes, and all because she had to walk a great distance. If she had known that it would turn out like this, she would never have left the house. The assistant came to the rescue. She knows what to do in such situations, and of course she couldn't ignore the problem because she knows how terrible it is when her feet hurt. March did a very good job and was able to help. The girl thanked her for that and said she could go rest now. And when she was alone in the room, she remembered her parents' words and wondered if it sounded so unrealistic that she had no desire to imagine it could be true either. At some point, she has no energy left even to sit on the bed. She lies down, but at the same time, she realizes that she will not be able to sleep either. Today is such a terrible day that Courtney is very disappointed in herself. She did not think that everything will be so wasted. As suddenly she thought, why not imagine that she had really been offered to be a princess? She even knows a man who, if everything were true, would be her husband. They had crossed paths with him only in the past, and this year, at the feast of the founding of the empire, the people of high society who had reached the age of majority were to be present on that day. And I think he also came to a tea party given by some high-ranking aristocrat. The girl remembers the day very well. But unfortunately, it just so happened that she was busy keeping an eye on her relatives and didn't even say hello to him, even though she really wanted and planned to do so. And yet it even seemed to her that it might have been possible that he remembered her face, for situations like yesterday had happened to them so often. Like any other person, It was hard to forget the impressive scenes in her facial expression when she was ashamed of her relatives. This guy has very good looks. A lot of girls dream of being with him. He's always been a role model for price gouging, and he's said to be extremely friendly with everyone, despite status or anything like that. There are even girls who call themselves the Crown Prince's guard and praise him. There probably aren't even any who have never heard of him and wouldn't like to be at least his girlfriend. For a moment, she stopped thinking about it and thought, what's the point of this, since it's never going to happen? Anyway, tomorrow everything will be forgotten, and there's no point in wasting sleep time on these thoughts. Tomorrow will be just as hard a day, so it's better to really spend this time on resting. In the meantime, the next day came. Her father insisted on welcoming the guests, and even though her daughter didn't believe that anyone would come at all, she obeyed him anyway, chose a suitable outfit, and went outside. When suddenly someone does come to them in a carriage, but it all looks like a dream. She's sure it's either a joke or something like that. But it's not what her father said yesterday. It just can't be. They stand outside their house and look at that carriage as if something is about to happen that will change their lives once and for all. And Courtney doubts it to the last, but she has some hope. Meanwhile, when she stops, some man gets out of it and says he'll be escorting her. But before saying hello, they decide to first clarify, as clumsy as it sounds, if he has the wrong address. To which he replies that everything is fine. And also, he couldn't have gotten the address wrong since he was here yesterday, and asked not to question it. From that moment on, she began to look at everything around her as if a miracle had happened that she had refused to believe in all this time. Now she was speechless. Courtney had even forgotten to say hello. And the same goes for her father. But it's not so bad, because that man did it instead of them. He promised he wouldn't hurt her. And now all she needs is to get in the carriage and go to a new happy future. It turns out that everything was true. But this is just the beginning. She decided that there is no need to rejoice before the time, because it is not known what will happen after the meeting with her fiancé and how he will react to it. It is not excluded that the guy may just change his mind and send her back. Courtney has no idea how long this journey will last or where they are going. But in any case, she is already very happy that at least some changes are taking place in her life. At least she has stopped thinking about those debts, because after marriage, everything can be solved by itself. In the end, she managed to persuade the man to go with her father so that she would be much safer. And if something happened, it would be much easier for the two of them. The man confesses that he feels like he's in a dream, and still, he can't believe that soon his daughter will be a princess. And finally, they will be able to get rid of all these problems. In any case, the girl does not plan to relax early. Even if the emperor chose her as his daughter-in-law, he probably did it because of some misunderstandings. That is what she is going to clarify. She doesn't see any normal explanation for it, because it can't be otherwise. Courtney will relax and be happy only when she hears personally from the prince that he sincerely wants to be her husband, without any trickery. And so far, it looks like there's some kind of mistake or catch, and it doesn't know what it is. She's so used to the lack of justice and fairness in her life that she no longer believes in anything, especially anything good. Also, because of the extreme excitement, she has the idea to run away. She is ready to risk a happy life, and all because she is not used to trusting anyone. She does not want to suddenly turn out to be some kind of joke, and in the end, everything will not be as colorful as she had imagined. In contrast to her, the man was much more excited about everything that was happening. He liked that the emperor's carriage had arrived much faster than they had planned, and also, her feet still hurt very badly. Today she had to wear an uncomfortable pair of shoes again, in which it is impossible to even sit. The girl wonders to herself how she manages to pretend that there is no problem with it at all. Things are so bad that she's in no mood to even smile. Even though they've arrived, she needs to greet His Majesty, but she just can't do it. As if he suddenly sensed it and offered her a new pair of shoes, which should be much more comfortable than the ones she was wearing now. Could anyone here be able to read minds? Otherwise, it was impossible to explain why he suddenly offered to change his shoes. Anyway, Courtney didn't mind. From this point on, her mood has lifted noticeably, something she's been sorely lacking, which means that maybe she'll start to look at things a little less badly than she has up until now.